And I actually placed my order for my first Desert Tech while I was still in Afghanistan. Bought my first gun in 2009. It was a little Ruger. Bought it used from a guy in a back of a Smith's parking lot. A little kind of frowned upon today. But anyway, it was a Ruger M77 Mark II. It was a 223 Remington. That was my first gun. I was 24 at the time. I was excited. I went out shooting all the time. I'd go to the gun shows and buy all the cheap ammo. I wasn't really trying to buy the expensive stuff or the nice stuff. I just wanted to go out and shoot. I shot that for a while. I was quite happy with it. Eventually, I wanted to move to something a little bit bigger. So I moved to it was actually a Remington VTR 308 with that triangle barrel. Supposed to be pretty cool, supposed to shoot pretty good. When I was out shooting it, it wasn't shooting too good for me. So I tried reloading. It didn't work nearly as well as I hoped it would go. So eventually I sold it to my brother. He had good results with it. I wanted to move on to something else. So I started looking a lot in the market. Wasn't sure how much I wanted to spend. So I started looking first at guns under $1,000. If you've ever searched for guns under $1,000, it's everything. My problem is I wanted to be a marksman, is what I really wanted to be. I was kind of sucked into that world of wanting to shoot things from a long distance. I wanted to shoot really well. So I started under $1,000. I didn't have a lot of money at the time. And the market was so flooded that I didn't really know where to look. I didn't know what to look at. I didn't know what cartridge to look at. But I continued to look. I started to look at cartridges more. I was really interested in the 300 Win Mag to begin with. You'd heard a lot about it. It was really popular for hunting. But the more I read, it didn't shoot as far as I wanted to shoot, I guess. Or at least there wasn't reports of it at the time. So I started looking bigger even. I started looking at 338 Lapua Magnum. And all the results I heard of that were outstanding. It was great for hunting, large game, small game. It was great for target hunting, shooting long distance. It was accurate, close distance. So I started to really research the 338. Now, I didn't really know what I was getting into necessarily at the time. I didn't know how expensive a 338 was to shoot. I didn't know too much about reloading at the time. I was really, really basic. I'd learned from my dad, who used old school methods. Everything's by hand. You wipe the grease on by hand, wipe the grease off by hand. I started to look more into the guns, and so I started to just raise the price. All of a sudden, I was looking at $2,000 guns, $3,000 guns. You start to see Savage coming into play. Around 3,000, you start to see Armalites come into play. An Armalite, to me, it looked awesome, right? It was a tactical gun. I'm in the military, so tactical looked cool. I started to do a lot of research on Armalites, and it wasn't good. They weren't the most accurate guns. So I said, whatever, I'll look more expensive. Started looking at $4,000 guns. You start to see a lot more custom guns, some Seikos, the TRG-42 specifically. Great results. But when you start talking about guns like that, people say, well, why don't you just go with this? Why don't you just go with this? So when you start looking at the Seiko, then people start to mention Desert Tech. And so I raised the price again. I started looking at $5,000 to $6,000 range, and I started to run into Desert Techs. And the Desert Tech was definitely something new because it's the bullpup design. I had never really looked at the bullpup design too much before, and it really caught my eye. In that same price range, though, you also run into other pretty cool guns. You run into like Barrett and a little bit more expensive Action International. But even at that price range, I still kept coming back to Desert Tech. I liked the bullpup. I liked the convertibility. Being able to convert it in under a minute was awesome for me. I'm a small guy, so a standard gun will drag on the ground pretty easy when I sling it. So that's the other part of Desert Tech that really caught my attention, is that 16-inch barrel covert. So that's where I was kind of locked onto that. Naturally, they are an expensive gun, and I didn't really have money at the time. But luckily, I was a single guy about to deploy. So I went to Afghanistan, and continued to research Desert Tech and follow Desert Tech while I was in Afghanistan. When you're a single guy with no bills, then, come the end of your deployment, you start thinking of what's going to be your gift to yourself when you get home. And I decided my gift to myself was going to be a Desert Tech with a Night Force scope. I was going to get a, bipod Desert Tech scope mount to go with it. And I actually placed my order for my first Desert Tech while I was still in Afghanistan. I think it was about 2 months before I came home. Just actually kind of thinking about it, I'm getting excited right now. But so when I got home in July that next week, I went down to Desert Tech's first shop. It was a little ghetto shop. I was actually a little bit skeptical going into the shop to begin with. But I went in there, I met Mike Davis. He was the salesman I was dealing with at the time. And we went down to Doug's Shooting Sports to do the sale on my Desert Tech. I opened the box. I was smiling. I was excited. Took the gun out quite frequently, almost every weekend. And for those who don't know, shooting a .338 usually is about $5 to $6 a round. I started reloading pretty quick to offset that cost. Got it down to roughly, it's about $2 when you load yourself. And it wasn't uncommon for me to go shoot 60 or 80 rounds at a time at the range. I loved it so much. You fast forward a few years past that, and I saw Desert Tech had openings, and that's actually where I landed my job with my dream company, which is Desert Tech. I was hired on as the warranty manager, and my love for the gun just grew from there. I did a shooting course at Sniper's Country, and I got to shoot the mile target, so that was my first time ever shooting a mile. My spotter, Russ Wallace, who actually works for us as well, got me on target in 2 rounds at a mile. So we walked out there. First we were shooting 1,200, 1,500, and then onto the mile in 2 rounds. So I was excited, and my love for Desert Tech's products grows every day.